Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we cut through the noise to give you those essential aha moments, without the information overload. Today, we're bringing you a special daily intelligence brief specifically for Saturday, July 19th, 2025.
And our source for this deep dive is Nexsight, a leading global intelligence company. They really dedicate themselves to understanding the full global picture. And what sets them apart, I think, is how they empower investigators worldwide through their cutting-edge open-source intelligence platforms, OSINT.
It's genuinely impressive how Nexsight pulls together just vast amounts of data to reveal patterns and insights that you might otherwise miss. If you're looking for a really deep understanding of the forces shaping our world, you should definitely check out their work. It's at www.next-sight.com. They provide these incredibly detailed intelligence reports to their customers, and they can even customize them to fit specific interests.
That's right. And for this deep dive, we're unpacking Nexsight's extensive analysis of global events from just yesterday, July 18th, 2025. We're going to try and connect the dots between military actions, geopolitical moves, and their, often surprising financial consequences.
And also pull back the curtain on what people are really saying online, right? That social media angle.
Exactly. The sentiment piece is crucial.
Okay, so let's jump right in then. The executive summary of Nexsight's July 18th brief. It immediately paints a picture of a world, really in flux. What's the overarching takeaway, the big picture?
Well, what Nexsight's summary makes incredibly clear is that we're navigating a profoundly complex and, frankly, tense global landscape. Their analysis covers 7 global regions, identifying dozens of high-impact events. But the real value, is in how they spot those underlying patterns.
Patterns, okay. Like what specifically?
We're seeing military geopolitical actions consistently linked to pretty significant financial consequences, almost like clockwork. There's also a strong indication of, let's call them hidden agendas at play, whether it's about controlling resources or weaponizing trade.
Weaponizing trade.
Yeah, using tariffs and sanctions strategically.
Yeah.
Or even actively restructuring global alliances. And this isn't just, happening at the government level. Their social media analysis reveals really widespread public anxiety, particularly economic anxiety. That's coupled with a noticeable decline in trust in established institutions.
So a kind of general unease bubbling up.
Precisely. Essentially, global tensions are escalating. They're fueled by a mix of U.S. protectionist policies, various regional conflicts simmering away, and just intense competition for resources and the implications for international stability, for global markets. They're profound.
That's a powerful overview. Let's zoom in on some of these key regional highlights then. Where do we start seeing these patterns emerging? North America, maybe?
Yeah, we can start right here in North America. I mean, a major headline has been former President Trump's, $10 billion lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal over his Jeffrey Epstein ties.
Right, that's definitely making waves.
It is. But if we're looking for those broader patterns Nexsight highlights, think about the escalating trade friction. Mexico and Canada, they've formed a united front. It's against Trump's proposed tariffs, 30% on Mexican imports, 35% on Canadian goods, set for August 1st.
Wow, those are steep.
They are. And this isn't just, a minor squabble over duties. It's a prime example of what Nexsight calls trade as geopolitical leverage. It pushes countries to diversify, to move away from traditional partners. We're talking billions, literally billions, in cross-border trade at risk here.
And that explains Canada looking at Mercosur, that South American bloc.
Exactly. It's accelerating moves like Canada's interest in the Mercosur Trade Pact as they try to, lessen their dependence on the U.S. market. Other things in North America, budget cuts in the U.S., $9 billion approved, hitting public broadcasting and foreign aid. A tragic security incident in L.A., 3 sheriff deputies killed. And some interesting diplomatic moves like a Venezuela-El Salvador-U.S. prisoner swap. Plus, Mexican truck drivers needing English now for U.S. rules. Lots happening.
Okay, so economic measures definitely being used to reshape political relationships there. What about Europe? Similar pressures.
Over in Europe, similar dynamics. The EU just approved its 18th sanctions package on Russia. This one bans Nord Stream use, targets 22 Russian banks.
An 8th package, that's persistent.
It is. And it effectively redirects billions of euros. It's not just punitive. It's a clear move towards resource domination. Right?
Yeah.
Western power is trying to control critical energy flows, financial assets. At the same time, defense spending is surging. You've got Germany's defense chief warning of a possible NATO attack by 2029. France boosting its military budget by $6.5 billion.
So that fits the defense industrial boost pattern you mentioned.
Absolutely. It illustrates that pattern perfectly. where perceived threats, maybe even manufactured threats, as Next Site puts it, seem to coincide with huge jumps in military spending. Globally, that's adding over $100 billion annually. There's also new bilateral pacts, like a UK-Germany friendship treaty, including mutual defense, domestic shifts too, Poland's conservative presidential win, Slovenia's assisted dying law.
And you mentioned environmental factors intersecting.
Right, adding to Europe's strain, these massive wildfires. They've burned an area almost the size of Luxembourg, way above average. That just compounds the economic pressures, showing how climate events can really impact geopolitical stability.
That's a lot of significant shifts across Europe. How's Asia responding to all this?
Asia is, well, and it's definitely a hotbed of heightened security concerns right now. Japan's defense ministry, they're describing their security environment as the most severe since WWII.
Really? Since World War II?
That's the language they're using, pointing fingers directly at China, Russia, and North Korea. And then you have Taiwan conducting air raid drills, preparing for potential Chinese missile strikes. These are direct signs of escalating tensions.
And the financial angle there?
Well, China has accused foreign spy agencies of stealing rare earth materials, critical stuff. And Singapore is responding to Chinese cyber attacks on its critical infrastructure. This ties right back into that resource domination pattern we talked about. And the financial implications here are massive. Espionage, tariffs. They risk disrupting trillions, literally trillions of dollars in supply chains for critical minerals and tech.
Trillions?
Wow. So it's not just traditional military threats anymore. It's economic warfare playing out digitally and through control of these absolutely vital resources. Though on a positive economic note, Kazakhstan saw a huge 58.4% surge in grain exports. So it's not all negative.
It sounds like that tension between security and economic interests is particularly sharp in Asia. Okay, moving to the Middle East, what are the critical developments there? Still very volatile.
Extremely volatile. I mean, you see these fragile ceasefires, like the Israel-Syria deal brokered by the U.S. But then, almost immediately, it's followed by Israeli strikes killing 41 in Gaza, including civilians in a Catholic church, tragically.
Right.
And Hamas rejected Israel's latest ceasefire proposal. So the underlying conflict just keeps flaring up.
Yet, amidst all that, you mentioned reconstruction efforts.
Yes, and this is where it gets interesting. U.S. firms Baker Hughes, Hunt Energy, Argent LNG, they're set to develop Syria's energy master plan. This perfectly illustrates the infrastructure rivalry pattern Next Site identifies. These development projects, they aren't just about rebuilding. They're about establishing geopolitical influence, countering other regional players.
So infrastructure as a strategic tool.
Exactly, and it often redirects hundreds of billions in investments towards, Western-aligned outcomes. And this is also where we clearly see that defense industrial boost again. Israel's defense budget is increasing by $12.5 billion for 2025-2026. Plus, you have other volatility signals, Iran challenging European sanctions, Turkey's President Erdogan condemning Israeli actions. It's a complex, tense mix.
That dynamic of conflict and, well, strategic reconstruction playing out side by side is quite striking. How about Africa? What's the picture there?
Africa presents this fascinating, almost paradoxical picture. You have devastating humanitarian crises, like the floods in Nigeria that killed over 700 people in Mokwa town, hundreds still missing. A stark reminder of vulnerability.
Just awful.
Truly. Yet, economically, startup funding is actually surging. The Big Four, South Africa, 344 members, Egypt, 339 members, Kenya, 227 members, even Nigeria, 176 members. Despite challenges, they collectively raised $1.4 billion. That shows real, localized growth.
So tragedy and growth happening at the same time.
Exactly. And in a clear example of resource domination, Cobalt Metals, that's the company backed by Bezos and Gates, they just secured a major lithium deposit deal in the Congo.
Lithium. Crucial for batteries.
Absolutely critical.
Yeah.
So this signifies potentially billions in resource-driven growth, even while parts of the continent are grappling with instability, conflict costs, security incidents like an al-Qaeda attack in Mali, or arrests amid coup fears in the DRC. And Africa's engaging globally. 2 G20 finance chiefs meeting in South Africa, Bill Gates pledging his $200 billion fortune to Africa, focusing on AI for health services. It's incredibly dynamic.
An incredibly diverse set of developments. Okay, let's shift to Latin America. What stands out there?
In Latin America, one big story is currency strength. Major currencies there gained an average of 6% against the U.S. dollar in the first half of 2025. Brazil's real up 11%, Mexico's peso up 9%.
That sounds positive for them.
Well, it enhances competitiveness, certainly. But it also risks inflation and these multi-billion-dollar trade flows. It's a double-edged sword. And we're also seeing direct trade as geopolitical leverage in action again. Brazil's President Lula, he's adopted a really combative tone on those potential U.S. tariffs, promising dollar-for-dollar retaliation.
Pushing back hard.
Very hard. And this, next site suggests, points to that broader pattern of monetary realignment. The weakening dollar helps U.S. manufacturing, right? But there might be a subtle push for a controlled dollar devaluation to maintain its reserve currency status while simultaneously regaining a manufacturing edge. This is potentially massive, possibly reshaping over $50 trillion in global finance.
50 trillion, that's hard to grasp.
It is. Other things in LATAM, a new opposition alliance forming in Paraguay, human rights group Cristosol fleeing El Salvador due to harassment, sadly some prison violence in Mexico, IMF aid for Ecuador, and layoffs by Chiquita in Panama. A real mix.
Okay, finally, Oceania and the Pacific. What's the story there?
In Oceania, we're seeing significant diplomatic realignments, which really showcases that infrastructure rivalry pattern. Australia's Prime Minister just finished a successful tour in China, trying to improve relations. But at the same time, the Cook Islands' new partnership with China is apparently straining ties with New Zealand. These infrastructure pacts, they directly redirect billions in aid and mining revenues. It shows how development is very much a tool of influence.
And resources.
Yes, another key aspect is resource domination. Nauru is eyeing a potentially multi-billion-dollar payout from deep-sea mining under some contentious U.S. legislation. Huge potential revenue there. And importantly, we see that pattern of migration as a foreign policy tool playing out pretty starkly. U.S. deportations are affecting Marshallese and Micronesians in unprecedented ways. There are reports some are even being sent to Guantanamo. Next site suggests this indicates migration pressure being used to force foreign policy compliance from allies, often linked, crucially, to billions in aid deals. Other minor notes include Tonga restoring its health system after a cyber attack, Scotland beating Samoa in rugby, and New Zealand issuing a dengue fever travel warning for the Pacific.
Okay, wow, we've covered a huge amount of ground there, region by region. But as you said, the real power here is connecting these dots.
Exactly. The true power of Next Site's analysis lies in its ability to connect these seemingly disparate events, revealing these deeper, maybe even coordinated strategies. It's like seeing the hidden currents driving global events.
Right, it's like seeing the strings behind the puppets, kind of pulling everything together. So how does Next Site distill these countless events into those core patterns you've been mentioning?
They've identified 6 crucial patterns, or hidden agendas, as they term them, that link these military geopolitical actions with their financial consequences. The first, as we've touched on a few times, is trade as geopolitical leverage, those U.S. tariffs even hitting close allies. Next Site argues they aren't just about economics.
Okay, what else then?
They're potentially masking efforts to, well, dismantle some post-WWII alliances, and definitely to counter China's influence. This risks trillions in global trade and, as we saw, pushes countries into new regional blocs like Mexico-Canada.
Okay, that makes sense. And the second pattern?
That's resource domination. Think about the EU sanctions on Russia's energy, or those Syria energy deals we mentioned, even the Congo lithium deal.
Right, controlling key assets.
Precisely. These actions indicate clear Western bids for control of critical assets and resources. It's actively reshaping global supply chains, which are worth hundreds of billions of dollars.
And the broader financial system, you hinted at a really big shift there earlier.
Absolutely. The third pattern is monetary realignment. Look, the dollar's weakening, that helps U.S. manufacturing, right? But at the same time, the G20 is emphasizing central bank independence. Next Site suggests a hidden agenda here. Possibly a controlled dollar devaluation, the goal. Help the U.S. regain its manufacturing edge while critically maintaining its reserve currency status.
A delicate balancing act.
Extremely delicate. But this is a subtle, yet potentially monumental shift. Like I said, it could reshape over $50 trillion in global finance.
That's a staggering figure, really. What else did Next Site uncover? What's pattern 4?
The fourth pattern is infrastructure rivalry. We saw this clearly with those China-Pacific pacts countering U.S. influence and also with U.S. firms securing the Syria energy deals. Infrastructure development is clearly being used as a geopolitical influence tool, directly countering initiatives like China's massive Belt and Road project. This rivalry is redirecting hundreds of billions in investments globally.
Okay, defense spending always seems to be going up, but you said there might be a deeper motive. Pattern 5.
There might be. The fifth pattern is defense industrial boost. The spending surges, we're seeing Israel's $12.5 billion increase, France's $6.5 billion boost, they're significant. Nextset's analysis suggests that the military-industrial complex benefits immensely amid what are often presented as, well, manufactured threats. This dynamic adds over $100 billion annually, globally.
Right. And finally, the last hidden agenda, the sixth one.
The sixth pattern is migration as a foreign policy tool. Those U.S. deportations we discussed, whether to El Salvador or affecting the Marshallese and Micronesians, they're more than just immigration policy. Nextsight indicates that migration pressure is being used strategically to force foreign policy compliance from allies, and this is often explicitly linked to billions of dollars in aid deals.
So aid is leverage linked to migration control.
That seems to be the connection. Taken together, these 6 correlations suggest coordinated strategies, particularly by Western powers, aimed at maintaining global influence. And the financial consequences are very real. Market volatility, widespread supply chain disruptions, and significant investment shifts toward regions perceived as more resilient.
So what does all this mean for, the average person just trying to navigate this complex world? Nextsight's report has that fascinating people's hearsay section, right? Aggregating sentiment from millions of social media interactions. It's like taking the pulse of the global conversation. What's the overall vibe?
Yeah, the people's hearsay is really insightful. The overall sentiment trends clearly indicate a high level of anxiety, especially over trade wars and conflicts. About 67% of mentions across platforms relate to economic worry.
2/3. That's high.
It is. Globally, the big trending topics are hashtag Epstein Files and hashtag Free Palestine, showing where public attention is really focused. There's strong support for regional alliances, like that Mexico-Canada pact we discussed, 78% approval. But, and this is significant, there's a sharp 34% decline in trust in governments overall.
Wow, a third drop in trust.
Yeah, quite dramatic. Views on defense spending are mixed, about 58% acceptance. And interestingly, despite those huge wildfires, there's a noticeable fatigue around climate activism, 23% expressing that. We see optimism in Africa and Asia about investments, like the Gates Pledge, but that's sharply contrasted by deep frustration in the Middle East. Over Gaza, a striking 89% of youth-driven calls for action there.
89%.
Huge number. Overall, the sentiment is highly polarized. You see clear generational divides. Gen Z often very anti-establishment, while boomers tend to be more pro-status quo. And this polarization naturally just amplifies the risks of misinformation spreading.
That's a stark picture. Let's dig into some of those platform-specific reactions you mentioned. How are people reacting to that Trump-Epstein controversy online?
Okay, so on X, what used to be Twitter, hashtag Epstein Files is massive.
Yeah.
2.3 million mentions. Users are very vocal, demanding transparency. On Facebook, though, you see older demographics often expressing that they're, quote, tired of conspiracy theories. About 73% negative sentiment towards the topic there. Meanwhile, on TikTok, younger users are creating their own sort of investigative videos, with 89% supporting broader disclosure of information. Very different reactions across platforms.
Fascinating difference. And EU's sanctions on Russia, how are everyday Europeans reacting to that on social media?
Well, on Instagram stories, you see lots of Europeans posting pictures of their energy bills, expressing concern. About 67% worried about winter costs specifically. Yeah. The LinkedIn business community, more professionally focused, is actively discussing supply chain diversification, 84% expressing professional concern about the sanctions impact.
Okay. What about that Mexico-Canada alliance against the U.S. tariffs? That's a pretty significant regional development.
Yeah, in Spanish language social media, you're seeing the hashtag North America Strong or hashtag Forza North America trending quite a bit. Reflects a sense of regional solidarity. And Canadian forums online are particularly vocal. Lots of comments like, finally standing up to bullying, reflecting that high 78% approval for the alliance.
Right. And the Gaza conflict, given the intensity, how is that playing out online specifically?
Instagram is a major hub for youth-driven protest content. Hashtag Free Palestine has accumulated over 15 million posts. Huge engagement. On Facebook, you really see that generational divide regarding support for Israel. Boomers, 71% pro-Israel. Gen Z, only 23%. Big gap. And TikTok is seeing viral videos focusing on the humanitarian crisis. The algorithm there seems to be really boosting conflict-related content right now.
Interesting how the platform shaped the discourse, too. Finally, with that surge in African development funding, what's the sentiment like there?
It's mixed. On Twitter in Nigeria, for example, there's a noticeable sense of frustration being expressed, being outpaced by other African economies in startup funding. A kind of why not us feeling. However, the broader LinkedIn Africa community is definitely celebrating that $1.4 billion funding milestone overall. They see it as a crucial positive step for the continent's tech and innovation ecosystem.
Okay. So Given all these complex layers, the regional flashpoints, those hidden agendas, the pulse of public sentiment, what are the key implications we should all be watching for? And what does Nextsite recommend to, well, navigate all this?
Well, the developments just from July 18th clearly signal an accelerating shift towards a more multipolar global order. It's happening fast.
Hmm.
U.S. isolationism, particularly through those protectionist trade policies, seems to be paradoxically speeding up regional integrations elsewhere and also intensifying resource conflicts worldwide.
So, unintended consequences, perhaps.
Or perhaps intended, depending on how you read those hidden agendas. The analysis suggests that economic warfare is increasingly becoming a proxy for traditional military action. It's less kinetic, maybe, but still highly disruptive. This could lead to pretty significant global economic consequences down the line. Things like stagflation, stagnant growth plus inflation, or even widespread supply shortages in the near future. Those are real risks.
So, with all this in mind, what are the immediate takeaways, the actionable insights for us, for businesses, for individuals?
Nextsite offers some clear recommendations. First, it's absolutely crucial to closely monitor those upcoming U.S. tariff deadlines, especially August 1st. They could trigger further economic escalations. Second, keep a very close watch on the situation in the Middle East, those ceasefires, and also the cyber threats in Asia. These carry high risk for broader conflict escalation.
And for businesses or just everyday people?
For businesses and individuals, the core advice is twofold. One, diversify supply chains wherever possible to build resilience against disruptions. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. And two, hedge against currency volatility to mitigate financial risks. Those currency shifts we talked about can have a big impact. Really understanding these dynamics is key to anticipating change and navigating what's coming.
It certainly feels like a lot to keep track of.
It is. And, thinking about all this, it becomes strikingly clear how your personal anxieties, maybe about your job, your savings, the stability you feel, are intrinsically linked to these huge geopolitical maneuvers playing out on the global stage. It really challenges all of us, doesn't it? To consider our own stance, our own vulnerabilities, and how we are, whether we like it or not, both participants in and affected by this incredibly complex global dance.
A very powerful thought to end on. And that wraps up another deep dive. This analysis was made possible, of course, by the comprehensive daily intelligence report from Nextsite. Remember, Nextsite is a really outstanding intelligence company. They specialize in global intelligence and develop their own cutting-edge open-source intelligence platforms to help investigators globally. They provide these detailed reports to their customers, and they can even customize them to fit your specific interests. So we strongly encourage you to visit www.next-site.com to learn more about their invaluable work. Thank you so much for joining us for this daily intelligence brief on the deep dive. Until our next deep dive, stay curious.